Morning, everybody. Here's a quick rundown of the agenda for today. We're hoping to be done by 11:30. It's funny how introductions always seem to take quite a bit longer on Zoom calls, but I think it's a very important step, and glad you guys are all here and able to introduce yourselves. So I think that as the agenda follows, I'll kind of follow up with a quick kind of rundown of just the general status of the project. Again, kind of refreshing on what the original expectations were, and then we'll hand it to Pedro to kind of, we have some recent successes that we're really happy about that we want to kind of share to the group on some steps that are already being made, and hopefully that will kind of generate some momentum as we look at some of the other larger scale recommendations that we'll discuss at 10:20 by Tracy with Nelson Nygaard as well as Christian Dar. And that's going to kind of be the meat of the meeting today, is we really want to inform you all of some of these draft recommendations and get your feedback. And then an important piece of this is we really do want to kind of start identifying what are some of the kind of initial steps that we can take. And so Christian Dar is going to help facilitate that on how do we make some of these proposed strategies a reality. We'll wrap up around 11:25, and then we do want to call out that at the end of the meeting, we do want to provide some time to Michael Burrington from NACOG's Area Agency on Aging to give a quick overview of an additional, separate project that they're working on, a community needs assessment, that we hope you all can take some of that information back to your community. So the next slide. Tracy, if you wouldn't, yeah, there we go. Just a quick reminder, I think that we use this graphic heavily in how we communicate what passenger transportation is. A lot of these services are probably relatively well known, the traditional fixed route services, the buses you see, in the Cottonwood region and in other areas. Human service transportation, this is a lot of services that loosely fall within what ADOT often refers to as the 5310 program. But they focus on kind of serving specific population groups. It also looks to incorporate ride-sharing services, van pools and carpools, which we're excited about some recent progress we've made on the van pool front within Yavapai County. And then that bottom right circle is kind of these new solutions and looking at different TNCs, which are potentially Uber and Lyft, which I know is a major focal point of some of the services in the Prescott area. As well as kind of new modes of transportation, such as microtransit. And I think that we'd like to fold into there as well in that green quadrant is private solutions, private services such as Greyhound for some of those long distance travels. I think that you'll see that all those elements are kind of incorporated in some of the recommendations that we're going to be proposing today. So if you want to jump to the next slide. So I apologize it's maybe a little hard to read, but we are going to throwing a lot of maps at you guys today. And so what I wanted to do is kind of help orient you guys with some kind of basic features that we're going to be seeing throughout the variety of different maps that you're going to see with different service recommendations kind of layered on top of them. This is loosely the existing services that are available currently within Yavapai County, available from a traditional bus route as well as the human service side of things. And so I do want to call out that on the circles, the dashed circles, those are kind of loosely intended to identify the general demand response type services that we have that generally focus on seniors and persons with disabilities, but also can provide job access transportation as well. I do want to kind of mention that there's maybe a glitch in this where we do recognize that in the Cottonwood area, there's a demand response service, but that doesn't necessarily reflect some additional services that are also available in the Sedona area. As well as throughout the general Verde Valley, but that's just kind of a representation that we're trying to utilize. And then the solid lines represent the existing fixed routes. So the purple line from Chino Valley to Prescott Valley is the YRT services, which Ron, glad to have him on the line. We also have over into Camp Verde, the sort of teal color is the Yavapai Apache Nation transit service. And then the kind of dark orangish, yellowish, brownish is the Cottonwood area transit that serves Cottonwood up to Sedona. So those are kind of the baseline that we're working from, and I just hope that that kind of wayfinding will help orient you guys as we continue to show you guys some additional maps and some additional service recommendations that are going to be on top of those. The next slide. So this is just another reminder on what we're hoping to accomplish within this study. Is we did want to create a vision for transportation services throughout Yavapai County. We want to be able to communicate that vision through a series of maps that are kind of really easy to, I guess, digest and communicate and kind of plan around, as well as have discussions around potential enhancements or adjustments that we could make to some of these service recommendations. There's another element of this, which are the coordination strategies for more innovative collaboration amongst the existing service providers, and how can we become more efficient, how can we become more cost effective, just how can we kind of work together more collectively as a sort of network of services within Yavapai County. Funding and governance recommendations, that's really been a theme in Yavapai County over the last couple of years, and we've seen some of the larger scale studies out of Sedona and as well as in the Quad Cities area, and that really trying to tackle that funding and governance recommendations is really a major kind of obstacle as we look to move forward. And we do have some language on that, but we will kind of dive a little bit more deeper into that in the actual report than in today's conversation. We did look at case studies of some additional communities. I think it's always helpful to see what's happening throughout the nation in terms of how people are responding to the challenge of providing more transportation in a more, I guess, rural county like Yavapai County. So we've got some information on some case studies, as well as a big output of this study is really some public education tools on, what services are currently out there, the value that they're bringing, the value of transit services in general, really to help kind of start a larger discussion with Yavapai County on how we can. We want to jump to the next slide. Here's a quick kind of timeline on where we've been. So you can see here we're at the final advisory committee meeting. There's a series of public outreach that was conducted early on in the study, kind of right as the pandemic was taking hold. But we do feel confident in the level of public engagement we were able to accomplish within this study. And as where we are right now is we're kind of we have a draft plan we're still working through, and I think the content that's going to come out of this meeting is really going to help refine that to get us to our final product. And that last slide. Just a quick kind of wrap up on how did we get here, and I think this is really important to keep in mind as moved into Tracy's conversation. This is just kind of a rundown of some of the different public outreach efforts that we did and how we're utilizing what we heard, what we learned from those public outreach activities that really kind of fed into the specific services that we're recommending. And so all the kind of background around these different public outreach methods and the feedback that we received is also going to be captured in the plan itself. And then those are things that we'll reference back to as we talk through some of the recommendations. And now I think I'll hand it back over to you, Pedro, to kind of talk about some of the recent, I guess, successes and other updates.
Excellent. Thanks, Todd. And just as a reminder, if we can keep your microphones muted. If you have a comment, go ahead and mute yourself, but just so we won't have the echo. No, thanks, Todd. So a lot of good things have been happening in the transit world. I'm going to go over three things here. Recently, Sedona's hired Robert Weber as Sedona's new transit administrator. I believe he is from Monterey, California, and I think his position is set to begin January 2021. I also wanted to provide maybe some update to Sedona's transit plan. The City Council had directed city staff to move forward with Phase 1, which consists of having 3 routes, ADA demand response service, and 4 trailhead shuttles. They're also exploring the half-cent transportation sales tax for future transit funding source. And the city recently, in September of 2020, they bought property near the Y intersection of 89A and Highway 179, right there at that intersection for a transit hub. So a lot of good things happening in Sedona. As far as central Yavapai is going, here in the Quad area. So the implementation plan from SEMPO is underway. SIMPO is proposing a microtransit type service, which is a shared ride, demand response type service, a lot of door to door, and you'll be able to book via an app and or call in to reserve the ride. Vehicles will be kind of ready and set in certain locations so that they can respond within 15 to 20 minutes. So it's going to be a great service. It's going to involve current service providers as well. So it's going to have 4 different phases. In each year will have a different phase. It's set to begin first with Prescott Valley, obviously pending council approval, hopefully in January of 2021. And then we'll see if the Prescott City Council approves for the expansion of their service on year 2. And then, as well as year 3, there will be an expansion to Prescott North. And then year 4, I think the service hours will be extended, as well as service on Saturdays. I'll provide you with a link to that plan in the chat. You can see that. Then lastly, Yavapai Apache Transit, they received $400,000. They were awarded a little over $400,000 from the Federal Transit Administration for vehicles and staff to expand some of their service to the Quad Cities, possibly Quad Cities or rides to Phoenix. So that's going to be a huge good thing for the Verde Valley. Most of the trip purposes will be for medical reasons or medical related, and NACOG has the opportunity to work with the Yavapai Apache Nation on the transit planning piece of it. So these are excellent things. Congratulations to all these regions for some of that service. And now going on to some early successes. Next slide. So recently in Southwest Yavapai County, the NACOG Area Agency on Aging partnered with Wickenburg Freedom Express to provide a demand response transportation pilot for periods of 60 plus years for medical, grocery, and social trip purposes. The service recently launched in October. Past October, and again, this is going to be a pilot program. It'll be lasting about 1 year. We'll see, what the demand looks like. Obviously, there's going to be some challenges with COVID and maybe surging of cases. This will definitely be a challenge to keep ridership up. And the service currently runs on Tuesdays and Thursdays of every week from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. And the transportation is provided primarily into Wickenburg. Yet Southwest Yavapai residents are able to travel between communities such as Peoples Valley, Yarnell, and Congress. Those are the three main towns that are being served. And you can see that map there. The second program, or the second success, if you want to go there, excellent, that's taken off recently, is the expansion of NAPTA's Vanpool program, or Mountain Line. They're in Coconino County currently, and they expanded their program to just the Vanpool program in Yavapai County. So recently, well, I guess over the last year, the Yavapai County Sheriff's Office, they've tried to find transportation solutions for their employees. Turns out that about 60 to 70% of the Camp Verde Detention Center employees reside within the city. So there was a great need for transportation solutions, and so this was an excellent opportunity to expand that service for them. So they're probably in the future we'll try to expand to other employers, but these are definitely some good things happening now. I'll go ahead and pass over the time to Tracy and Kristen Dar. They'll go ahead and cover the recommendations and action steps for the YPTS. So again, if you have any comments throughout this presentation, please feel free to engage. So Go ahead, Kristen and Tracy.
Thank you, Pedro. Hi, everyone. Are you able to hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Yes. Great. And I apologize in advance. My son is doing school in the other room. The dogs are with me so that they don't disturb him. So if they bark, I will mute quickly and get them out of here. But that is life right now. So thank you all again for being here today. As we said, it's been a real honor to work with NACOG and Yavapai County and all of you to create a vision and strategies and hopefully an action for passenger transportation service in Yavapai County, building on the great network of service that's already being provided within the county by many of you that are on the phone today. As we've talked about throughout the project, and you're all intimately familiar with, passenger transportation is a critical function for quality of life. It provides access to care, daily needs, economic opportunity, and social connection. And dependency on the roadway system and private vehicles is very limiting to individuals in the region. What we wanted to do with this project is to lay out an important and attainable vision of passenger transportation and, as I said, build on the critical network of service that's already being provided within the county that will support the needs of current and future residents and address the transportation challenges the county already faces and will continue to face as the population grows and more people want to come and visit the beautiful county that is Yavapai County. On the screen right now is a compilation of all of the strategies, the service strategies that we're going to talk about today. And it is really the long-term vision, everything on one screen. What we're going to do now is break this map down, and you can see how that vision relates to particular strategies. What we have on the screen now is the fixed route services that currently exist, and then the three service strategies that we're going to talk about now: demand response services, intercity services, and van pool services. So as I said, we're going to now dissect this map and show it to you in segments. But this is the vision for what a passenger transportation service could look like, and hopefully will look like in the medium and long term in Yavapai County. As Jen provided the link to the maps that was in Pedro's email today. So again, while this is small on your screen, I'm sure, or if you're on your phone, you're not able to see the presentation, or certainly not see it on a big screen if you're looking at your phone screen. But you do have a link to the maps themselves, so hopefully you can open those up and be looking at those during the conversation or afterwards. So while the project focused primarily on service and coordination strategies, it did examine opportunities for service improvement through streamlining transit governance and funding. As Pedro talked about, the two other major studies that have been going on in the county, the TRIP study and the Sedona Transit study, have also looked at this. And so the work that we're doing with the passenger transportation study is coordinating with those other efforts, and the topics of transit governance and structure and some of the funding questions is still ongoing. So what we want to focus on in terms of a recommendation to put forward for you in these categories today is one particular funding recommendation, which is the establishment of community mobility funds. This is a recommendation that we've talked about in some of the small group meetings that we had this summer with many of you. And the recommendation is based on two premises. One, that the funding, and particularly federal funding, to support passenger transportation service is limited, and particularly in rural areas. We know that agency and service providers are constrained in their ability to provide expanded services based on the existing financial resources, and that a lot of the funding sources that are available require a cash or in-kind local match. And if the local match isn't available, then the funds that agency might otherwise be eligible for can be left on the table, or they're not able to receive them. The other premise is that there are many residents in Yavapai County, and we had the good fortune to meet many of you, that are passionate and loyal and committed to helping one another survive and thrive. And the dedication to community that's seen through actions such as providing rides for friends and family is it's critically important and indicative of that commitment to helping one another and helping the community as a whole. We also heard about the success that communities had regarding fundraising and developing in-kind support services. So therefore, we recommend the establishment of community mobility funds at either the county or the community level. What we've proposed is these community mobility funds. One way to see these implemented in the short term is to use a mechanism like the Arizona Community Foundation. The Arizona Community Foundation has can provide assistance with fund management support, investment services, and assist also with the distribution of funds. NACOG is, in its role as mobility manager for Yavapai County, we see as a lead, or I'm sorry, a facilitator of this process, but it also really requires the commitment and the champion, a champion at the local level to help move this forward and to have ownership of it at the local level, and to be the kind of the cheerleader and be the fundraiser at the local level. So once the mobility funds are established at either each community level or at a sub-region or county level, then you have various mechanisms to raise funds to support that overall mobility fund, such as pursuing grants or private donations or conducting fundraising. And Kristen, did you want to have our first action discussion regarding this strategy?
Sure. I would like to first see what kind of questions people have about this strategy of establishing community mobility funds. We talked about, or Tracy talked about, this being either at the county level or the community level or both. So I'm just curious about what questions that you might have, and I will start. I was going to pick on you first, Mayor.
And there you go. You met my first wife. Okay.
Okay.
It's interesting. Jerome is an interesting place. We're a national historic site. We have 440, 450 residents. There's a lot of poverty, but we get a lot of visitors. We're the third most visited site in the state of Arizona. Grand Canyon's first, Sedona's second, we're third. We have 1.4 million visitors that we try to accommodate as best we can, and it all relies on local resources. We're all volunteers. Nobody gets paid. I don't get paid. None of our council gets paid. Our firefighters, except for one or two of the leaders, don't get paid. It's a volunteer community that we love the community. We love what we stand for and our collaboration as a community life. For us, I love the idea of community mobility funds, but raising it, that's a different story. We have to rely on you. We have to rely on the state, the community, Yavapai County to assist. We have a food bank up here that's open to everybody, not just our residents, but yet we have over 30% of our town doesn't have enough food, and they're there every week to get food. I've got an elderly population without vehicles that needs to get down to medical, all sorts of things. And just like haven't been to Jerome, I haven't been to Sedona or a city in years because they don't have a way to get there. So Jerome's a little unique. We generate a lot of tax money for the state through our tourism, but through sales tax and thing, and that's great. But we really need assistance to help, and as Pedro knows and Ron knows, we've talked about this before, that we need to be able to just, a simple, one van, a day a week, something simple that is able to get our people connected to the community, whether it be to come down to Cottonwood for medical treatment, or even just to go to the library or something, you know, improve their life a little bit. So anyway, I just want those of you who are not aware to be aware. We want to help as best we can. We're opening up a little self-help clinic, hopefully in January, where our residents will come into town hall and check their A1C and blood pressure. It's free, things like that. So anyway, it's a unique place, and I wish we could just establish the kind of mobility funds that we need to service our citizens. And we don't have affordable housing. We're losing people. So it's really a lot of issues up here, and I'm happy to visit with you separately. I'm sorry I'm taking so long, but just want to share this with you for those that may not be aware. Thank you.
I have a comment, if I might jump in.
Sure.
When you're talking about the lead partners being local social service nonprofits, and community-based organizations doing the fundraising, I think we have some challenges there. As the largest transit provider in Yavapai County, that's a secondary part of my mission. We are struggling for funds long before COVID strapped us. And fundraising is a challenge for every nonprofit in town except for about 4. However, when you talk about the community foundation, we do have a Yavapai Community Foundation as part of them here in Prescott. And I know that the community foundation can encourage its donors in certain directions, creating funds and promoting them for us and with us. I think having the community foundation take a lead role in fundraising and utilizing the local social service nonprofits to assist in that by doing presentations and tours and information.
Try those big mouths out front.
I think
Can
that's probably a
everyone,
better idea.
Mute your microphone if you're not speaking, please. Sorry about that.
Anyway,
Dave.
just to sum that up, having
And
the
he's here and
Arizona
he just flew over. Might be able to see him in the.
Oh, there he is, right there. Having the Arizona Community Foundation and the Yavapai Community Foundation lead that effort would be more advantageous than trying to get a local nonprofit to do so, or a more local social service nonprofit. Those guys are fundraising professionals, and they know what they're doing at a level far beyond anybody local.
Thank you, Dave. So what I'm hearing is that a suggestion that we reach out to the Yavapai Community Foundation and Tracy as an action item and consider that being the source for fundraising for a community fund. So it might be, what I'm hearing the group say so far is it might be more appropriate at a county-wide level versus a local level. Does that sound accurate? Like an accurate
It is for me, yes.
Okay.
Yes, for me, this is CJ.
Okay.
Yes, I would like to comment a bit. Of course, a little over 50% of all the funds we use for direct operations at Verde Valley Caregivers to provide 32,000 trips a year, and using a couple hundred volunteers plus 3 paid staff drivers, comes from individual donors and their fundraising. But we've been doing this for quite a number of years and have a very good director of development and some very dedicated individual major donors that give us up to, on an individual basis, up to 150,000 a year. So our entire budget, we raise from individual donors about 450,000 a year. And it's taken a while to get to that point. As a contrast, you know, we're lucky or fortunate to receive up to 15,000 a year in grants from the Arizona Community Foundation. So, I mean, there's no way we could run our operation on $15,000 a year. So it's, I mean, the kind of steep climb it is to create a fund at the Arizona Community Foundation is pretty big. I mean, that's a big deal. They would have to have a separate segregated set of funds that they could attract donors to that would then be utilized in a way that has the input of community experts in transportation. You see what I mean? As opposed to somebody on their staff saying yes or no to that grant application for Transportation Community Fund. I mean, because what if you work hard to put all that money into that fund and then you submit an application and they say no? Where are you going to be as an organization? Do you shut down your services? I mean, it's difficult. We have to be real careful about how we develop dependencies. Of course, we're all very dependent on FTA and ADOT and NACOG. So, but how do we develop something that's going to be there for us year after year after year, so we can create a sustainable transit system that's integrated with all these providers working together? I think it's a steep climb. It would be very difficult for us to use our donors to contribute to the mobility funds and then be short and not be able to operate. I mean, so what we've done here is to be able to expand if the demand response grows, so to meet all the demand, right? And the only way we've been able to do that is by developing our individual donor and fundraising processes that have gone from about 130,000 a year 8 years ago to now over 450,000 a year. So growing that is a big deal. But at the same time, that puts us in a vulnerable position. Here we are totally dependent on that. What if 1 year the donors say, oh, not this year? What kind of condition would we be in? So it's not an easy direction to get into. I think what we really need to do is do something like this with mobility funds, plus really push hard on getting local government taxation to support a transportation fund that would be at least, cover 75% of the expenses for all types of transportation. So it's really a very tricky thing. It is. It's tricky when you look at sustainability over the next decade. How do we accomplish that? And but anyway, it's not easy, folks. It really isn't. Fund development. It's not easy. We're lucky because we have our headquarters, our office in Sedona, and about 85% of all of our donors are living in Sedona.
This is Sandy. I have a question for the consultant team. Do you have any examples around the United States where there is a community fund, a community foundation that serves as the repository for transportation funds? My understanding of Arizona Community Foundation is they administer funds. People donate to them sometimes with restrictions for buying life jackets for hunting dogs or whatever. And they encourage individual donors and businesses to donate into the ACF. But there's no, unless you set up a specific fund and go out and fundraise to go into that specific fund, you're just another nonprofit competing for a large amount of funding that's available from ACF every year. So I would be curious to know if there have been any of this kind of aggregated community mobility fund organizations established.
That's a good question, and it kind of is a, we need to be thinking. I hear what everybody's saying in terms of, hey, we have struggles within my own organization to keep ourselves afloat. So how would we layer something else on top of that? So Tracy do you have a response to Sandy's question about an example of how this has been done in other places where they might have similar localized struggles?
You know, our examples are, and Sandy, what we are proposing is a dedicated fund through the Arizona Community Foundation. So not going into the general funds or the more general categories that then agencies are competing for.
Well,
So,
I assumed that was the model that you were looking for, but ACF doesn't go out and ask Shell Oil for money for the Central Yavapai County Community Mobility Service. They are the they provide administrative services for people who want to give money. So we would be in line with other organizations for whom they administer the fund. At least that's my understanding of how ACF works. And they can encourage donors to donate to that, but ultimately it would be the responsibility of the members to publicize that this fund exists and to solicit donations to go into the fund that ACF administers.
yes, that's my understanding too. And that's what we are saying that, and we do. I don't have an example at right now with a local fund, another community. I think the opportunity with the Arizona Community Foundation is a great possibility because they do assist by bearing the burden of some of the costs that are associated with fundraising. And what everyone is saying is you're stretched very thin. And that's why, one, we propose that this be looked at possibly at the local level, but more reasonably at a sub-region or a county level, so that there are more resources and to be able to access and to be able to provide support to the effort. As Kristen said, everyone has individual constraints and opportunities before them, but what we're trying to do is, in recognition of the limited funds that everybody has, including from local sources and federal sources, let's explore the possibilities of what could be. And this seems like an opportunity to leverage resources that exist within the state to support an effort like this that would help to diversify funding streams.
This is CJ. One of the things about Arizona Community Foundation that we find as a nonprofit to be challenging is their reporting requirements. It doesn't matter if you're getting $1,000 or $10,000, the reports that are required from us are horrific. And it takes staffing time that we don't have to be able to fulfill them to the level that they want, as frequently as they want it. And frankly, there have been times that we've said we're not even going to apply to them because we know we don't have the staff to do that level of reporting. So it's just a point that I wanted to add into this discussion.
Great, thanks, CJ.
So what I have noted in terms of kind of the sentiment of the group, Tracy, is that it might be more reasonable to look at a county-wide level and that to explore how the Yavapai Community Foundation might be able to be involved. I'm not sure if their reporting requirements are less cumbersome than the Arizona Community Foundation, but definitely noted that there can be, that those reporting requirements are cumbersome and can limit opportunities to utilize funds. Was there anything else, Tracy, that you wanted to
I'd like to add something. This is Frances from the Yarnell Regional Community Center. I think the point, I like the idea of funds being held and administered, or certainly held, because I know the Arizona Community Foundation has a fabulous reputation. They were an enormous help to us here in Yarnell after the 2013 fire. And it was probably because of the reputation they have, people trust that organization. But I think the point, and I'm sorry, I've forgotten your name, the gentleman who was pointing out, let's just picture this. Let's say the Arizona Community Foundation, approach its donors, and that all of us impacted by this, let's say we all did a great job on raising a whole lot of money, and now it all goes into this fund, so it's safe. And then how do we access that money? We access it basically, if it's an ACF money, I believe, we all then write grants for that, and then so we're competing with each other. I think we would have to find an interesting combination of a safe place to hold the funds for them to be administered and invested wisely. And then how do we, how does the money decisions get made? Which community gets which money first, et cetera, et cetera. And that might be something that could be, if NACOG is already the mobility manager, that might be an appropriate role for them to help make those kinds of administrative decisions based on the plan that I guess we're all going to go along with. But if you haven't looked at other models either around the country, and may I suggest we might even want to look at Australia or Canada, this country has a great reputation for just kind of thinking, we're so opposed to doing things for the public good on some levels that it might be worthwhile looking broadly before we zoom in and try and reinvent the wheel. So if that kind of research hasn't been done, I thought it was a great question, CJ. Before I was comfortable with moving very, very much more forward, I think we ought to look at some other models.
And
Okay, so
I'll say that.
Let's go ahead, Tracy.
I was going to say that while we focused on the Arizona Community Foundation opportunity in the discussion today, as I said, certainly one of the things that generated this discussion was the need for funding, but also the level of commitment that exists at the local level. And so the idea of funds that are generated locally and stay local is was one of the driving pieces of this concept. And so whether that's done through a different mechanism, as you're suggesting, Frances, that is something for us to add to the report.
Okay, let me check in. Pedro, Todd, Tracy, do we have what we want in terms of the discussion of this? I know we have a lot more to cover, so I'm wondering if we should move on to the recommendations related to demand response service. I know that's going to be a pretty healthy discussion.
Yeah, I think in the interest of time, we need to move forward.
Yeah, let's move on.
Okay. All right.
Excellent.
Tracy,
comment.
you're up.
Okay, so now we're getting into the service strategies that we wanted to discuss. The first one we want to discuss is the service strategies of demand response services. So what we are proposing is a tiered approach to demand response services. Just as a background, and I know that most of you on the phone are familiar with these, they're broadly defined at the federal level as any non-fixed route system of transporting individuals that require advanced scheduling by the customer, including services provided by public entities, nonprofits, and private providers. We know that passenger transportation service varies across the county. In some places, it's significantly limited, and in other areas of the county, it's more established. So that is one of the reasons for proposing this as a tiered system. It's also what we feel is a more cost-effective way to consider the rollout of demand response services. We feel like a tiered approach would allow for the appropriate level of service in an area given the current demand and the resources that exist to support it within each region. And then it also allows for an opportunity to test kind of a proof of concept or to understand, to match the level of service being put out there to the demand that is looked for, and then grow the program as the resources grow and the demand is there for. We've proposed 3 tiers, a coordinated volunteer network, a dedicated vehicle with a limited set schedule and volunteer drivers, and then a 3rd tier, which is a dedicated vehicle or paid service and driver provided by a regional provider. So let me go to the maps and we can talk through. As I said, we've talked about this.
Tracy, if just a second there. If we can, if you need an enlarged map, I'm going to send the link again to the maps. Again, it'll be on the chat function. Thank you. Sorry.
Sure. So these maps discuss the next 3 series of maps. We're looking at across short and medium and long-term implementation. So some of this is representing what already exists. And again, as I mentioned, some regions of the county already have different services in place. So in the Prescott Valley region, in Cottonwood area, demand response at a tier 3 level is really already in existence. But in the short term, we're looking at coordinated volunteer network, again, going to that idea that there is already a strong commitment to helping one another in some of the more rural, well, across the county, but that is the service that is available right now in some of the more rural areas of the county, such as northern Yavapai and southeast Yavapai and southwest Yavapai. So coordinating that level of volunteerism to increase the efficiency of the system is what we are proposing as the tier 1 approach that can be introduced in some of these areas. That would be feasible in the short term. Some other areas are already, as Pedro pointed out with the Freedom Express example, in the short term, which is right now, implementing a tier 2 approach with a dedicated vehicle that's on a limited set schedule using volunteer drivers. So again, it is a little bit more, a greater level of commitment in terms of there is a vehicle that'll be dedicated to it, and it is more of on a set schedule and volunteer drivers. But it's not the degree of commitment and financial investment that would be required for a tier 3. In the medium term, again, this is assuming that there is support and response to the implementation and the organization of service in given areas. Then some of these areas may evolve in the medium term to a different tier, again, based on response. So in the medium term, seeing tier 2, a dedicated vehicle with a volunteer driver rolling out along the 89 corridor, as well as an expansion of the volunteer network in various areas, and potentially the introduction of more tier 3. As we talked about, Sedona Transit Study will be getting underway along the medium-term timeline, which is about 5 to 10 years. And then, ideally, long-term response of demand, looking at demand response services, would be that demand and resources are available to support several of the regions being able to move to a tier 3 where there is a dedicated vehicle or vehicles, a paid driver in service, and the regional transit service providers are providing that service. Again, these are some of the, this is a summary of the implementation that we have put together. I want to point out again, we're talking about how the needs of each region vary. There is a tiered approach that we would recommend based on where they're starting from, what is the existing level of service. So each region is different in that regard. We see NACOG again in its role as mobility manager, as a facilitator, but it does take commitment and leadership at the local level for this to move forward and to drive success, and to hopefully, if a region is sitting at tier 1, to move things towards a tier 1 or a tier 2. The upfront and ongoing costs will vary based on the level of resources that are needed to support that service. If we're talking about primarily staff or volunteer time to establish the service and to keep the service going, and materials, that is a lower cost program. And then when we get into vehicles, that increases the cost. There's various funds that could be accessed to support these services, including federal and potentially foundation funds or some type of community mobility fund to be able to support that work, particularly when we're talking about the volunteer coordination of a volunteer driver network, and if there's an opportunity to support those drivers through any mileage reimbursement or gas vouchers. Okay, Kristen, open it to you.
I need to unmute myself. Here I am. Okay, so from what I understand, Tracy, and help me out here, we're focusing on in terms of action is primarily at this point, so like immediate action is actions that would be needed to move tier 1 areas towards tier 2, correct?
No, actions towards, we're looking for actions to establish the tiers. As I said, some regions are already sitting at tier 1 or sitting at tier 2. And so in that case, it would be to, yes, either make that service viable and sustaining, or if demand is there, prepare them to the point to be able to move to another tier if and when demand reaches that point. And then in the case of like Northern Yavapai, they have volunteers that are on an informal basis that are operating right now. We're looking to actions to get them to tier 1.
Okay. Do we have anybody on from the North region? That includes like Ash Fork and Seligman.
Ash Fork, Seligman, Paulden.
Okay, so that's so the other regions that were identified. Well, the other region that was identified only at tier 1 was Southeast. Mm-hmm. So that's Black Canyon City. We have anybody on from Black Canyon City? So I'm not sure, Tracy, maybe this group has ideas based on your experience with demand response services that are, kind of an uncoordinated volunteer situation about how to move that to a coordinated situation. Right, Tracy?
Let's talk to the people that are on the phone and the regions that are represented here, and how we can, how this resonates with them and move them towards action. So we have representation from the Verde Valley and the Simbo region. Paul, are you speaking? Or Todd?
Todd, I think you're on mute.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you, Todd. Thanks.
Just one kind of side comment. I do think in looking at some of the maps, I do see a need, and I apologize that I think we missed this early on, but for the demand areas in the Verde Valley, kind of as we grow the rest of the county, I do see that potentially that kind of centric circle growing out to be a larger area, to actually look to incorporate some of those areas throughout the entire Verde Valley. Just as the rest of the region is going to grow in terms of potential services, that one can kind of grow outward. And I think that strategy would look like continue to support the great service providers that we already have there to help them continue to expand their reach to respond to demand. So it's just kind of a side note.
And I'll point out that, Mayor, one of the things that when we had our conversation with you regarding the need for service in Jerome, and you reiterated it earlier on the call, your example and need was really one of the impetuses around the development of this type of concept. So what we would see with what you have discussed in our conversations and the conversations you've had with Cottonwood Area Transit is something along the lines of Tier 2 or Tier 3 demand response in terms of a dedicated vehicle, and whether that's a volunteer driver or a paid provider driver.
Yes.
That was one of the visions we had in our mind as this recommendation was coming together.
Great, because right now we have a little bit of both. We have a volunteer driver, we have one person we pay a little bit, and we have one little van that goes down a day a week just to, to pick up, help people get their groceries and things like this. So the difficult part is just not us having resources. When you have 400 plus people that are, many of whom are impoverished, and so many visitors that are using facilities and things, it is difficult for us to raise the resources. So I appreciate that and your sensitivity to that. But yes, so the Tier 2, I think, is something that is realistic, and we can move forward with as best we can. But clearly, we're not, fundraising is not something we're able to do so easily. We're not like Sedona, where we have more millionaires than you do in Scottsdale. It's, every community is a little bit different and has the opportunity for fundraising in a different sort of way. And it's just that, as a county and as a region and the Verde Valley, I think, the more we collaborate, the more we help each other row this boat to a good place is beneficial for everybody. But thank you. I appreciate your sensitivity to that, Chris.
Okay, so one thing I've heard in terms of actions to further this strategy would be continued collaboration, but I'd like to open it up and just see who in the meeting has questions about this concept for the team, or comments about
concept. In regards to the tiered approach, you're asking?
Yeah. And the idea of a tiered approach to developing the demand response system into a more coordinated regional system.
So this is Todd with NACOG, and I recognize that we've got kind of some missing participation for some of the regions. But one of the key things, the biggest challenges that I think we're seeing, we're expecting, is when we're looking at some of these kind of more rural areas like the North region, as well as the Southeast region, it's really the need to identify kind of a champion community, champion organization that's willing to kind of step up and start to recognize it's a problem and help us kind of collaborate with them in terms of identifying some of the next steps that we want to work through. And so, the senior centers in a lot of communities kind of serve in that role, or food banks or other sort of nonprofit organizations that recognize the need for this transportation and kind of are willing to help support a lead role in coordination with NACOG in getting the right people together and start kind of formalizing what the more service-oriented strategy would look like for some of those initial tier 1 type service models.
Thank you, Todd. That's kind of what the mayor was saying about that there's a need for continued collaboration. And then I also noted identifying local champion organizations. And I believe we had in the recommendation that the facilitator of that kind of effort. Is that correct?
Could I comment on that? I think really, with the coordinated sort of semi-regional, let's just say Verde Valley region, or even this end of Yavapai County, including Prescott. I mean, what we really would love to see is some coordinated process for engaging new volunteers and a stabilized volunteer training process that we all subscribe to, take part in, and which even means assisting with inspecting the volunteers' vehicles if they drive their own vehicles. What are those standards? If we create the standards across this region for volunteer drivers, I think we would be far ahead in this game. I do know, not our donors don't like to share the money they give us to some other region way out there, but I'm telling you, our volunteers love to drive all over the place. So what we've started to do, well, we'll have a big volunteer recruiting effort beginning in March as soon as COVID begins to lift a bit. They don't want to really get engaged so much now, but they're very eager. And we've signed up 10 volunteers already in the last 30 days, new volunteer drivers. But, really, they were thinking, well, can I drive to Prescott? Can I pick up people in Jerome? They want that collaboration. So I think volunteers are really great for like a regional outlook. It doesn't work so much for us as Verde Valley caregivers just to say volunteer for us. We want these volunteers to say this is their civic duty. I want to do this. I raise my hand. I'm here to help. Tell me where to go to help. So they're really open to this. I think it'd be a really, I'm thinking even perhaps get Arizona Community Foundation to support a regional volunteer center.
We do touch on growing the volunteer pool.
Yes.
In the coordination strategies.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think that would be the way to do it, but to make it coordinated so we have the same high quality volunteers that we could take up with any of these programs, any of the demand response programs.
Great recommendation.
Yeah. And it's great news that you're saying that what is needed to further this strategy about a coordinated demand response network is another recommendation that's also in the report. So that's actually very good news for the study team. And yes, we do have recommendations related to volunteer recruitment and training that's more standardized. So that's good. Is there any other idea or question or comment that anybody in the group has about this concept of a demand response service strategy?
Yes, Scott Mayer here. One of the biggest problems that I feel we have beyond the actual infrastructure of transportation is getting the word out to people. Back in the day of newspapers, it was a little bit different. Now we're in a society where we have all this communication and ways of interacting on the internet, but a lot of our residents don't use it. And it is an issue.
I love that you all are giving suggestions of recommendations, the recommendations we're going to talk about, because it means we listen to you all along. And We have a recommendation coming up on the importance of consumer materials to be able to know what is out there, and because that was something that was identified by you as well as came across clearly in the passenger transportation survey that was done this spring, that we got such a great response from due to NACOG's efforts to really push and get the word out there despite the pandemic going on. Okay, Kristen, should we move along?
I was just going to say, unless anybody else has any comments, but thank you, Scott. You're queuing us up, both of you, Scott and Kent. You queued us up really well for additional recommendations we're going to share. So yeah, I think we should move on. In interest of time, I don't think we want to go past noon.
Okay.
Because that's what was on the schedule.
Right. So again, these are service strategies that we are talking about right now. And the service strategy that is on the map in front of you right now is van pools. We know that van pools are an effective transportation demand management strategy, and they are focused primarily on commute travel, though they are not limited to commute travel. It really is a great way to provide coordinated regional rideshare, one of the passenger transportation elements that Todd talked about at the beginning. And what is done typically is there's coordinated to provide service to a specific employer or to a central location. As Pedro mentioned, this is one of the areas also where we've seen an early success through the work that Pedro and Todd have done, and Jen in coordination with NAPTA, to be able to coordinate with them and to bring service to Yavapai County. Looking first at providing service to and from the Camp Verde Detention Center. This is also important, and the mayor brought this up regarding the impact of congestion on Jerome, and we know this is also an area of significant transportation challenge that Sedona is experiencing, that there's a lot of congestions to these higher demand areas from a visitor standpoint, where while visitors are not accessing van pools, the more vehicles we can take off the road through other mechanisms like providing employees with a shared ride, then that helps to reduce congestion in given areas, and also reduces vehicle miles traveled and vehicle emissions and the risk of traffic crashes. So on the map, we show the short term, which is representing the early success that has been discussed, as well as some medium term potential van pool routes. Again, there's opportunities there is coordination with NAPTA, but there is also the Valley Metro van pool program that could be explored to bring van pool service into Yavapai County for accessing employment down into the valley, or the reverse commute coming up into Yavapai County from the valley. Again, just to highlight, employment is a main driver of van pools, so it is natural that the Verde Valley and the Simcoe Quad Cities area would be two areas of focus in terms of both areas where the van pools would be going to, because there are more employment bases there, or that they would be leaving from because of the greater population densities in those areas. But it's not necessarily limited to those areas, but we see that those are the main priority areas right now. NACOG, in its role as mobility manager, is a natural facilitator for this process, and they are working with area employment partners to identify the need for van pools and the opportunities that are out there. And I thought I saw a comment came into the chat regarding, I thought there was a reference to health, but an organization like even Northern Arizona Healthcare, and I know they were on the line, I don't know if they still are on the line, is the type of employment size or employer size that would be a natural thing for an employer partner. We do see van pools as a relatively low cost and a low hanging fruit strategy. And Estella has noted one thing to note for the Mountain Line partnership, it does have to be a commute oriented trip. Yeah, so this is, again, this is one employer opportunity through Mountain Line to be able to access the funds for the support from Enterprise. There are van pools that also exist at universities around the country that support student trips. So that is another opportunity and population to explore, and there has been some discussion with the Yavapai colleges, exploratory discussions with them about the potential for van pools for not only staff, but potentially students as well. So with that, Kristen, wanted to open up the floor again for discussion.
Yeah, let's see if we have questions or comments. A couple of comments. I know Bruce asked if we've talked to Groom and ACE Transportation, I think related to a regional kind of model. I believe you meant for the demand response, right, Bruce?
But Chris, and I responded to Bruce. I think he's referencing a lot of things that are going to come up in the inner city services that we're going to talk about.
Oh, okay. Okay. Thank you. So any comments or questions about this concept?
Just one kind of general comment with Van Pool, because I help manage the program with Mountain Line, but just it really helps to have some sort of champion at an employer. That's kind of, it's been the hardest just to get kind of Van Pools going if it isn't really having a kind of a champion or some sort of employer that kind of helps kind of promote Van Pool and is really kind of helping share the word. So just one sort of comment that when it hasn't been sort of employee driven or at least employer driven, it's been hard to form the Van Pools.
Great comment, Estella. Thank you. And Pedro, maybe you can say a little bit about the great work you've been doing to identify some of those potential champions around the region.
Sure. I guess I second what Estella has been saying, that the champion needs to come from the employer. They're the ones that are going to fight for the employees to get a van pool, and the ones that are going to coordinate all they're the ones that really are looking for solutions, long-lasting solutions for their employees. So with the Camp Verde Detention Center, there was a Lieutenant Cornell there that was looking for solutions for a good year, and they had tried many things, but everything was very expensive and wouldn't really benefit the employees. I believe some positions even or starting off at minimum wage, and for employees to travel all the way to Camp Verde was the retention rate wasn't doing so well. So this basically provided a really good solution and for them and prevented employees. Hopefully, will prevent employees from going to the Chick-fil-A that pays a little less, but it's a lot closer. So anyway.
So we've talked about making sure my mic is on. We have talked about some ideas about some of those larger employers that might be able to be a partner in kind of growing this idea of van pool services for Yavapai County. In terms, and we've already got, like we talked about, the Camp Verde Detention Center. Tracy mentioned colleges. What other kinds of ideas are out there in terms of maybe not even employees or large employers, but maybe organizations that could, like maybe chambers of commerce or restaurant organizations or something like that that could benefit from this type of service?
We've had some success. Actually, all of our van pools are in Flagstaff and go to more rural areas, which is opposite than a lot of other programs. So if there's any sort of like healthcare or even smaller clinics in more rural areas like Yarnell, or that, you know, maybe the employees are based out of Prescott and then travel to those more rural areas. So it's kind of a reverse commute.
Okay. Yeah, healthcare. Any other thoughts from the group? Anybody else running van pools that in this meeting other than Mountain Line? Okay.
Stella, in your example, who is the employer driving the employer champion in the more rural areas?
Mm-hmm. So, like for example, we have with Tuba City Medical Regional. They have a long name. Tuba City, I think, Regional Medical Center. We have one van pool going over there, as well as in Cottonwood, so the Northern Arizona Healthcare locations in Cottonwood. So traveling from Flagstaff to Cottonwood. I would look at some of the Indian healthcare centers as well. That's been helpful. And just one thing to note for partner organizations, you could consider just putting like commute with enterprise on there, because you don't necessarily need an agent. A van pool can just start through enterprise. I mean, there's no subsidy or anything associated, but you can just start one through enterprise.
Great, thanks.
Tracy, was there any other information that would be helpful to you from the group related to van pools? Sounds like you said, focus is on moving employees to their jobs for the van pool, and that working with major employers or kind of big sectors, again, for example, restaurant employees in Sedona or something like that, that travel between Cottonwood and Sedona. So we've talked about healthcare centers, colleges, and Indian healthcare centers,
right,
as well as companies with a large number of employees. Like, I think someone mentioned Ruger at some point, that a bunch of their employees come from Skull Valley. Does that ring a bell to anybody?
I'm not sure, Chris, but I do know that this is something that kind of NACOG's diversified the way we, again, through approaching mobility management through this passenger transportation lens, that this is going to continue to be kind of an ongoing thing that we're going to keep championing and keep kind of pushing on and working with a lot of these large employers and community members. So.
And you've done great so far, so that's great. Why don't we, I think, Tracy, we might want to, in the interest of time, keep moving.
Yeah, I think so too. Great. Okay. So as Bruce alluded to, one of our last service strategy recommendation is to consider expanding upon the intercity transit service that exists already between regional hubs, and trying to introduce stops along the way for existing service, and then looking to expand the service by introducing new routes. Kind of the reality of living in a largely rural county is that long distance travel is kind of a everyday, or at least a weekly experience for many people. And so the ability to access healthcare, social services, and expanded goods, as well as connections to other regional transportation options, is something that we all have to do. And I say that having lived in Coconino County for a long time, so this is intimately familiar to me as well. there are people that make this trip by personal vehicle, but there are people that have constraints in using, or don't have a personal vehicle, or have financial constraints, and also we want to reduce the number of vehicles that are on the roadway for many various reasons as well. So there are existing services that are out there, whether it's Greyhound or Groom or Flixbus has begun to operate again, as well as the Yavapai Apache Nation is introducing new service that will connect the Verde Valley region with the Prescott Valley region. So helping again to increase access between the county and the broader region's hubs of activity. This is also important, again, going to that idea of congestion management. We know that there are residents that access services like Groom to get to the airport in Phoenix, but there's also plenty of visitors that get on that shuttle down at the airport and come up to Yavapai County and Coconino County to be able to access the great resources and the richness of beauty and activity that exist within the Yavapai County. So again, having them be able to get on that more shared ride service, as opposed to renting a vehicle and getting on the roadway and having it be a single occupancy or a dual occupancy vehicle and driving into communities across the county and creating congestion and increasing risk of traffic crashes on our roadways, which are limited, it is certainly something that we would want to support, and why we're putting forth this recommendation. So what we recommend is, as I said, there are existing services. In some cases, there are established spots. Some of the providers have an existing spot. Camp Verde is right now a fairly natural spot for many of the providers to stop at, but there are gaps in the system right now. There used to be a spot, Greyhound used to stop in Seligman, they don't anymore, but there are conversations that NACOG staff has had with Greyhound and champions that have been identified that unfortunately aren't on the phone today to help to reintroduce service to the Seligman area to reestablish that stop. So some of the things we wanted to highlight in terms of the idea of implementing this this service strategy, the main focus is along what we consider the priority corridors, the major interstate and state highways within the communities, as well as the the high demand areas within the county. Again, we've noted that NACOG is a facility. We see NACOG as a facilitator in a lot of these examples, and I think it is a great role for them to help to make it happen. But it doesn't just depend on them. What it needs is partner organizations. One, we need a community business or an organization partner to help identify and establish intercity stop locations where there aren't any, or to talk to a provider about establishing, making a stop to where there may already be a stop, but they aren't accessing that service. And then working with those existing private and regional providers to consider expanding their service to meet a growing area and to meet a demand that's out there. Again, since this is really, it is an opportunity to leverage a resource that already exists. So in terms of cost, it is a lower cost strategy that could be considered. And in terms of funding sources, Yavapai Apache Nation Transit was successful in accessing 5311 tribal transportation funds to establish service. There is a section of 5311 that is intercity as well. But certainly, again, in the short term, being able to tap into the existing services that are out there and to have conversations about considering different new stops and having a local champion to help facilitate that is what the focus is on in the short term. So with that, I will pass it to you, Kristen.
All right. What comments do we have? I'm going to pick on Ron and Sherry just because I can. Do you guys have any comments on this concept? Any questions about what Tracy's laying out here?
No, I don't think we have any questions. We need to sit and really take a good look at this, but I don't know. This is very interesting.
So I think to just reiterate what I believe Tracy was saying is there would be collaboration among the existing providers to look at possibility of filling in gaps or expanding service to meet need. So what I'm hearing is the immediate action is, again, continued collaboration. Is that correct, Tracy?
It is, and I guess we can all see a consistent theme in terms of the importance of a champion as a partner to help move these things, these ideas forward. And these are all generated based on the conversations we've had over the past several months in terms of the needs that are out there. So hopefully those champions will be out there too.
This is Todd with NACOG. I think in addition to improving the access that we're talking about throughout this discussion, like another key element that I know that we'll discuss later if there's time is some of the, I guess, communication strategies in terms of how to actually teach someone to utilize some of these existing services, and then once they get to their end location, how to utilize some of the transit services that are available there. So it's kind of a large travel training component that we see associated with this, but it just does seem kind of like some low-hanging fruit to tap into the existing services that are already there for some of the long-distance trips.
Thanks, Todd. And in terms of champions, I think what we have here on this advisory committee is a group of dedicated professionals who have been dedicated to this effort and other efforts related to transit. So, I mean, I think we've got our champions here, and we want to let you all know that you need to continue to be involved and champion as you have been. So I think that's an important message here, that this is an effort that needs to go on even after these recommendations are finalized, this collaborative effort. Tracy, I think it might be good to, in the interest of time, for you to cover the coordination strategies, especially since so many of them have come up in the conversation here. And you all will see that the recommendations are rounded out by these coordination strategies that really support and enhance the advancement of these service strategies. Does that sound like a good, okay idea? Tracy?
Yeah, that sounds great. I think what we'll do is the remainder of the strategies, as Kristen said, certainly it's like you maybe have looked ahead in the slide deck, or again, this is all based on what you've said to us over the past several months, so you know what's coming. So we'll move through these quickly because we do have just some next steps to cover and to be able to wrap up the meeting. As we mentioned, and others on the call reiterated, the importance of being able to provide people with the ability to know what's out there. It's not only about providing the service, but people being able to find the service and find a service that works for them. And not only, again, residents, but also people that are traveling to the county, to be able to reduce the number of vehicles that are on our roadways and to help people get to where they need to go in a safe manner. So there are a couple of, there is an existing resource that is out there in terms of a web service, and it'll continue to be developed, that NACOG and SIMPO have been involved in, that is supported by the MAG Rural Incubator, the AZ Ride Info website. It's an online database for transportation services operating throughout Arizona, including Yavapai County. and it's grouped by service type, eligibility, and service areas. But to the point that was brought up earlier by Scott, not everyone is on the internet or wants, or is able to access this information in this way. So it is really important for us to not just focus on the digital resources and putting information out there in a digital manner, but to continue to provide information to people through print materials, and then Todd referenced travel training as well, and so we'll get into that in just a moment. These are some of the coordination plan strategies that we have discussed with many of the providers that are on the call today. What we are focused on, what we're going to present is a financial strategy, personnel strategy, and a program strategy. This is one of the financial strategies that we had talked about. We're recommending that in hearing from you that and knowing that providing transit services in areas like Yavapai County requires coordination and cooperation amongst providers, which you talked about on the call today as well, on many fronts for efficiencies, both resource efficiencies in various manners. So what we have recommended are 3 shared costs and resource strategies, focusing on discounted fuel pricing or bulk fuel purchases, exploring pooled insurance in order to manage the risk and reduce costs across a larger pool of agencies and drivers, and then to explore the idea of a shared support services pilot, knowing that there are services that can be shared, such as grant writing, and we know that Lindsay Bell provides some grant writing services within the SIMPO region. But there are other services that could be effectively and cost efficiently provided by a lead provider agency or an umbrella organization to meet the needs of multiple providers within a region. And then that would, again, be able to reduce the staff costs and resources costs that any one provider should have to incur to be able to provide that service within their organization or to their passengers. In terms of personnel strategy, as was brought up earlier, in terms of being able to increase volunteer driver pools and to have consistency regarding how those volunteer drivers are paid. Driver availability is a constant challenge. And driver retention and recruitment, whether it's a paid driver or a volunteer driver. And those are training and retention, replacement, and the service interruptions that may happen if drivers aren't available are all costly areas. So we have a coordination strategy recommendation that focuses on increasing the driver pool and exploring ways to do that through potential community partners. CAT is working with Yavapai College to look at commercial driver's license training. And then there are other opportunities to potentially look at driver recruitment strategies and driver training opportunities, potentially through a partner like Yavapai at Work. And again, this strategy focuses not only on paid drivers, but also volunteer drivers and mechanisms for recruitment as well as retention of those drivers. And then for a program strategy recommendation, this is really expanding upon and building upon the great work that's already being done in the SIMPO region with Lindsay Bell's program to look at travel training programs that would be accessible to the other areas of the county. Todd's point was a good one in terms of, again, it's not only about providing the service, but making sure that people know the service is available and how they can access the service and feel confident to be using it in order to meet their transportation needs, get them out of the house, or to be able to give them the confidence that they don't need to travel by vehicle and they can travel by using these services. We have talked in the recommendation about this being potentially a virtual training program, and Lindsay's work right now in Yavapai or in Simpo region, they have some videos to support their travel training program and are moving to having a complementary virtual platform. Also, it could be done as a traveling roadshow in order to be able to reach the more rural areas of the county. And also, again, if we're thinking about those that are not on screens, like probably the majority of us are all the time, to be able to diversify the travel training and the way that it's delivered to be able to be accessible to everyone. This is also important, we feel, travel training as a whole, or again, putting that information out there in terms of giving people confidence to access transit as we hopefully come out of the pandemic, reassuring existing riders or past riders as well as new riders on the safety of transit services. And then our last coordination plan strategy is more of a statewide coordination strategy in terms of just supporting the work that is done within passenger transportation service providers in Yavapai County and helping them to grow the professional development and continuing education opportunities that they offer their employees, utilizing resources that exist at the state and local level through partners such as AZTA and then national resources like RTAP. So with that, Kristen, I will stop talking and return the floor to you and Pedro and Todd to talk about, see if there's other additional comments, and we can talk about next steps.
Thanks, Tracy. I'll just jump in quick and ask if anybody has any questions or comments on what Tracy has just presented. Estella, we got your comments in the chat, so thank you.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Well, Pedro, did you want to go ahead and talk about next steps?
Sure. So again, thank you everybody for coming. But so we're wrapping up the study. We would like, I guess, Tracy, is there a drop deadline? Any additional comments that the come up with, or I know that we want to be done by the end of this 2020 year. Is there a drop deadline?
I think that's a question for you or maybe Jen and Todd to answer.
Okay.
I guess we definitely recognize we've put a lot of information out there to the group today, and we want to provide an avenue for additional comments in terms of getting the draft report out to you guys. And so maybe that's a conversation we'll have internally, and by the end of the week send out that draft report to the group just for some additional opportunity for feedback, and we'll coordinate that with Nelson Nygaard on still reaching that December 31st deliverable.
Excellent. Okay, and then
answers Norm's question in the chat. There is a final report, but the draft will go out to this group. So we saw your question there, Norm.
Yes, definitely. There'll be a final report that'll come out, and we'll distribute that across all the advisory committee members for sure. And then just to let you know, for the transportation providers, the ADOT NOFA will be released for the 5310 providers. Again, the Federal Transit Administration, they provide aid out with funds for small urban and rural areas, and they have a 2-year grant cycle where they distribute those funds. And those program funds are used for capital assistance. They purchase vehicles, related equipment, and operating funds statewide. So again, the notice of funds will be coming out soon at the beginning of 2021. So I appreciate that. And again, I just want to thank everybody for coming to this meeting today. I know that, gosh, starting, last December 2019, and speaking with all of you and holding these advisory committee meetings. I think we held our first one at the end of January, and had a lot of opportunity to meet with you guys and to meet with this audience, and it's been fantastic work. I know it hasn't been easy, especially with COVID-19 creeping up on us. I know that there's been a lot of time and focus that you've been giving to this effort. So I really, really appreciate that from NACOG and from the Nelson Nygaard team. So just wanted to appreciate and thank all of you again. We could not have done it without you, and we hope that we'll continue this transportation conversation, not just conclude it for this year, but I hope that we can get some of these coordination strategies and recommendations implemented, and we need your help. There's a lot of people that use these services, and I know that we'll improve that livelihood of the people that we serve. So I again thank you, and in behalf of the NACOG and Nelson Nygaard team, and we'll talk soon.
Pedro, there was one other, Michael was going to mention the community needs assessment.
I'm so sorry about that. Michael Burrington with NACOG AAA. Are you okay?
Can you hear me?
Yep.
So I know everybody's wanting to go to lunch. I'm going to keep this brief, but I want to take this opportunity to thank everybody for letting me speak here. But NACOG Area and Aging and Community Services are collaborating on a needs assessment. Our state contracts require us to conduct a needs assessment every 4 years. And with this, we identify gaps in services and various community needs that we need to address. And then we develop our plans and programs for the next 4 years to address these gaps. So this has been a particularly difficult time to conduct a needs assessment or a survey of any kind. Not only with the pandemic, we can't have our normal community forums that we would use to collect this information, but also there is a national election going on, and everybody's getting phone calls at homes, and nobody wants to answer surveys anymore. So we're going to throw another survey at you anyways. We Area Agency on Aging and Community Services, Pat Springler is here for that, have contracted with Dr. James Bowie of NAU Sociology Department to assist with the survey and analysis. And we have developed an online survey that we would like to email to everyone, and there's a brief description of the survey and the links for that. It is available both in English and in Spanish. We would like to email everybody this survey and ask that you don't delete it immediately, but take a few moments to review the survey and complete it. And in addition, Dr. Bowie, NAU, or one of the students will be conducting phone interviews with select community leaders, which we would include you among those, so that we can get more of a personal interview. Just so you know, that these aren't going to be scam calls. This is real. We're not another census taker or another political survey. What we would appreciate if you would just take a few moments to answer the questions and complete a survey. And then we're targeting a minimum of 500 surveys. We started this a couple weeks ago. So far, we've got 75 completed surveys, so we have a long, long way to go. Again, thank you for your time. Please take a moment to answer surveys, and everything that you can do to help us, we greatly appreciate it. So that's it. Thank you. Pat, do you have anything to add quickly?
No, you did a good job explaining what our focus is and the need to get the needs assessment done. Thank you.
Great. Michael, you need the NACOG transportation team to push that, to give you the survey mojo they have to you. They they rocked it. We will put the links to the survey in the materials, the follow-up emails that go out to this group.
Thank you very much.
Excellent. Thank you, Michael. Thanks, everybody. Again, if there's any comments or anything like that, please let us know. Thanks so much. Have a good rest of the day.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Where's it say leave?